This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, June the 29th, in the year 1958, the World Cup final was held. It was a fantastic World Cup final between Brazil and Sweden. So the 1958 championship was huge in the World Cup. This was actually the first and only time in World Cup history that the four home nations, aka England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, all qualified for the World Cup, despite the fact that there was only 16 spots left. So in 1958, the host and defending champs would qualify automatically. So Sweden, hosting the World Cup, would do so, and West Germany, being the defending champs, would get there. Of the remaining 14 places, 9 to Europe, 3 to South America, 1 to North America, 1 to Asia/Africa. It was humongous and all that. Wales finished second in their group behind the Czechs, but they were in a playoff with Israel for a spot. Now, Israel actually won its group by default because their three opponents refused to play them. But FIFA ruled said that you had to play at least one thing, and Wales won the playoff and qualified. Northern Ireland, England, and Scotland all qualified as well. The Soviets qualified. Argentina was in for the first time since 1934. Hard to believe that Argentina had missed World Cups in the past, knowing how powerful they are nowadays. And of course, this was the first and only time Italy had missed the World Cup by qualification until 2018. All that. So anyway, the group stages happened. West Germany and Northern Ireland qualified out of Group 1. There was a playoff between Northern Ireland and the Czechs. They decided to do playoffs and all that. If it wasn't for the playoff, by goal differential, it would have been the Czechs in not Northern Ireland to the quarterfinals alongside West Germany. In Group 2, France and Yugoslavia won those spots. Group 3, Sweden and Wales did so. But again, Wales played that, had to play a playoff against the Hungarians. If it wasn't for that, if it was no playoff, then Hungary would have qualified as alongside Sweden based on goal differential. In Group 4, Brazil and the Soviets tied. Brazil and the Soviets qualified. England had to qualify against the Soviets. But so the Soviets played a playoff against England and beat them 1-0. So England could not get to the quarterfinals. And it was the last time until 2014 that England failed to get out of the group stage. In the quarterfinals, Brazil beat Wales 1-0. France beat Northern Ireland 4-0. Sweden beat the Soviets 2-0. And Germany beat Yugoslavia 1-0. In the semis, Brazil beat France 5-2 despite the fact that Jules Fontaine put up a goal. Put up a lot of them. Sweden would beat Germany 3-1 in a shocker, in a sense, as it was the defending champs. In the third place game, France would use 4 goals from Jules Fontaine to get to 13 goals and win 6-3. But then the final happened. So it was Brazil and Sweden. Brazil won the game 5-2, finally winning a World Cup. It's hard to believe that Brazil had to wait so long before their first ever title, and they've won the most titles. Brazil was snake bit. 1938, they had a good team, but they decided to rest their players for the final, but it screwed up and Brazil lost. In 1950, Brazil hosted the World Cup and had the World Cup on home turf, so no excuses. They got to the round robin finals area, lost to Uruguay 2-1, and lost the World Cup then. Anyway, this 5-2 Brazil-Sweden matchup has the most goals scored in a World Cup final. And it's the greatest winning margin in a final, 3 goals. The records for youngest and oldest goal scorer in a World Cup final were set. Pele at 17 years, 249 days. Niels Lidholm for Sweden, 35 years, 263 days. Well, anyway, And the funny thing about Sweden is that for the first and only time a World Cup stage in Europe was not won by a European nation. And the funny thing is, this year, 2024, both Brazil and Sweden lost their final players who played on the 58 squad. Brazil's last surviving 1958 World Cup champion was Mario Zagallo, and Sweden's was Kurt Hamrin. So, anyway. Anyway, so Brazil and Sweden both were yellow. There was a draw, but Sweden was made yellow. Brazil decided to wear blue instead. They were going to wear white, but because they wore white in 1950 and lost, they didn't want to do that. So anyway, Brazil lined up, as you can see in the picture, if you're watching the picture, in blue. Well, Gilmar was the goalie, with Nilton Santos, Bellini, Orlando, and Jalma Santos. In the back, with Zagallo, Didi, Cito, and Garincha. In the middle, with Pele and Fava being forwards. Sweden had Kalle Svensson in the net, with Bergmark, Parling, Gustafsson, and Oxborn defending. Hammargren, Borgsen, Lidom, and Skreden pretty much in the midfield, and Simonsen up front. Now, the rules were that there were no substitutions per minute, so practically you would need to produce and all that. So anyway, sorry about that. So the game went on. Sweden started the scoring with a goal by Nils Lidholm, the oldest scorer in the World Cup final. But Lidholm was a legend at AC Milan, and Sweden could have used him in the 1950 World Cup. But they had a policy that if you played for a team outside of Sweden, you couldn't be on the roster. But after how good Lidholm was, and the others were for AC Milan, they relented by 1954. Unfortunately, Fava would score 5 minutes later to make it 1-1. And then Fava put up another goal to make it 2-1 Brazil at the break. So it was like, okay, slow and steady. And then Pele's super goal in the 55th minute, as he took control of the ball in the penalty area, chipped the ball over the defender, and then smashed it past Svensson in the net. It's one of the most iconic World Cup final goals. Still to this day, like 66 years later. Brazil would score on a goal by Mario Zagallo, who would soon become Brazil's manager for the 1970 World Cup when the total team effort for Brazil got them in. Simonsen made it 4-2, but it was too little too late as Brazil hung on and Pele scored the 5th goal. Make it 5-2. So the star was born. And this was the first World Cup to really be televised. Well, they televised it in Europe with Kinescope highlights set for North America. But the fact of the matter was that it was an amazing World Cup. It brought Pele to the world stage at age 17 and all that. And Brazil finally got the World Cup. Brazil would go on to repeat as champions in 1962, winning the tournament in Chile. 1966, they had a good team, but were hacked by Hungary and Portugal, like hacking Pele's legs, literally. Brazil didn't get to the quarterfinals in 66, but in 1970, they used their team effort, led by Mario Zagallo as their manager, to win the World Cup. Although it would take another 24 years till Brazil finally got the World Cup again in 1994, winning on penalties against Italy, and then in 2002, they took care of Germany. Sweden would not get to a semifinals of a World Cup till 1994 when they shocked everyone by getting to the semis. But falling to, I believe it was Brazil, wasn't it? Or was it Italy? I can't remember. But yeah, Sweden got to the 3rd place game and won it. But yeah, it was a great time to be Swedish and all that. I mean, it was strange having a World Cup in a Nordic country because of the stuff, but all that. But it doesn't matter. The World Cup was great. Anyway, I'm going to do.